What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my motel room here in Key West. Listen, quick update on my health. This is so freaky. It's like exactly like last time. So I was actually thinking I might have had food poisoning. Let me run down the dates for you. If you were here for yesterday's video, you know I was making the video in the hotel room because I was cautious about the chemtrails, everything that they're spraying in Florida. I haven't seen it as bad down here in Key West as I saw it up in northern Florida. North Florida, I'm telling you, is ground zero. It's like they're spraying the boomers and anybody else who comes in, they're way down once they cross the Georgia line. So anyway, second day here, I just fell ill almost immediately. And I thought it might be food poisoning because we had some friends that are still here who came down from Charlottesville, Virginia, unbeknownst to us, and our trip was unbeknownst to them, but we found out about a week or so ago. So we made sure to get together their second day here, our third day here. We had a meal together. Within an hour and a half, I felt really bad, and I thought, well, this is food poisoning. Came back to the room. Day two, same thing, deathly ill, but I'm like, well, it's not really food poisoning because it was coming and going, kind of like a virus, like a stomach flu. I thought, well, there's so many people down here from so many places from around the world. I mean, we've heard dozens of different languages spoken as we're just passing through the streets, the boardwalks, the piers. So I'm like, well, that's it. It's the crud, like we got at basic training in the Army when all of us guys from all over the U.S. ended up, So anyway, day three, which was yesterday, I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to be sick our whole time in Key West, which we never put an end date to this trip. We kind of figured, well, let's just go to Key West and hang out until it's warm in Virginia. So we were literally thinking March or April, right? 6 weeks or so. And a lot of folks haven't watched us for a while. This is not uncommon for us. Last year, we spent the five months worth of winter in the Philippine Islands, where my wife's from. So it's nothing for us to just kind of snowbird it until winter's over. But I thought, man, this is going to suck if I'm sick down here the whole time. Well, I woke up this morning feeling like $1 million. You can probably tell by my demeanor, my appearance. I just got out of a shower after a 2-mile run. I went out, and it wasn't even early. I woke up relatively, I usually get up between 4:30 and 5 back home. Woke up around 6:30, expecting to be sick. Felt great. Got my notes together for today's video, then went out and ran 2 miles at 8:30 when it was already kind of warm. It was in the mid-70s, very humid. I was sweating from the humidity before I was from the efforts of the run. Felt great. Almost started sprinting. Now, if you remember, the last time I was affected from drone effects, it was the exact same thing. So ill for 3 days, but then on the fourth day, completely healed and more energy than when I was 20 or 30 years younger. The exact same thing. So what is going on? And are some of us targeted, or are these just the effects that we'll experience once we've had an episode with whatever's going on? So let me read you. I got this information, and again, it comes from an email. Thank you for the email. Oh, who was this? Daryl or Danny? I forgot to write the name down, but he sent me an article. I want to give credit to where I got this information. It comes from thegazetteteller.com. These are direct quotes. It was an article about top secret Pentagon files being leaked by a whistleblower, and about how the next attack, which is here, is going to make the little c look like the common cold. So the article states, again, gazetteteller.com. According to whistleblowers inside a private DC military lab, this covert operation is developing an airborne neurotoxin fused with synthetic mRNA that can modify human behavior on a mass scale. The so-called next pandemic will not be a respiratory virus like the little c. It will be a neurological attack specifically designed to target cognitive functions, suppress free thought, and eliminate resistance to global governance mandates. Keep that part in mind. So why would they do that? Keep that part in mind. Sources indicate that Vector X was tested, okay, maybe that's what they're calling it, or at least the bioweaponized weapon. Vector X was tested in secret military exercises in 2023 and 2024 using, get this, aerosol dispersion techniques over U.S. military bases and select urban areas. Aerosol release, chemtrails, spraying from the air. The article continues. The substance interacts with the human brain, altering neurotransmitter functions to increase compliance. That means doing what you're told without question. Reduce independent thought, which means not questioning what you're told, and suppress critical thinking abilities. You do it without question. It's like you're a good soldier. And no disrespect to soldiers, sailors, airmen, and women, or Marines. I was a soldier in the U.S. Army. You didn't question authority. You just did it. I was lower enlisted, okay? The article continues. The U.S. military-industrial complex has full knowledge of this operation and is collaborating with select pharmaceutical companies to disguise it as a new therapeutic measure against future pandemic threats. So once again, it's going to be presented as, here, take this tablet because this will protect you from what's coming, whereas the true threat is the tablet. Almost finished here. The article continues. Just last paragraph. We are no longer dealing with just a virus. We are dealing with a full-scale biological assault on the human mind. The little c was just the beta test. The real experiment is happening now. So, are folks like myself and others who have experienced these events, are we the guinea pigs? They're testing it? Or are we being given whatever they're giving us in doses small enough not to unalive us, but large enough to where we experience these effects, but then after we have our miraculous recovery on the fourth day, they're ready to give us the next segment or the next, a lot of times when you get vaccines, there are certain, you get them in stages. Are we ready for the next stage? So listen, I've got to go down here. I've got several emails you folks have sent, and I'm getting caught up on many of them. You can continue to send them. If you have a story you want to share here with the channel, the email address is crazylake@mail.com. You must give us your permission to share. And if you don't want us to use your name, let us know. We'll keep you anonymous. But here's one from Suzanne. Suzanne writes, "Hi again, Kevin. This is your West Virginia buddy who emailed you a few weeks ago supporting you and commenting that I was also sick from the fog here in Southwest Florida around Christmas time." I remember your email, Suzanne, and I did read it on the channel. Many of you will remember that. "Yes, you have my permission to share my email if this helps anyone else, and I'm very sorry you aren't feeling well. You may want to get away from Florida before you get sicker." Suzanne and everybody else, again, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned we might stay here till the end of March or April. After experiencing, number one, what we saw with the massive amounts of chemtrails coming into the state, plus what I've experienced as a result of that, we may be cutting this trip much shorter. Yeah, I will keep you updated on that. I came here to do boots on the ground research, which is what I'm doing. I didn't come here to be unalived. Okay, I will sit through the remainder of our cold winter up in Virginia before I'll stay down here and let them unalive me because I'm waiting for it to get warm in late March. Okay? Suzanne continues, "I am within a few miles as the crow flies, when they were still alive, from where you are in Key West. So it's no surprise, sadly, that this is affecting you, but very disheartening. They are also unaliving all the animals and birds, which make no sense to me at all. I was very sad to hear from you that our local eagle Harriet had her chicks die and was seemingly ill herself." That's the eagles from the Eagle Cam. "Where I live on a preserve, we usually have deer. The birds have been gone for years. And I notice now that there have been no deer around for weeks. And these are big animals." And listen, the Key West deer, they're a little bit smaller than the deer we see on the mainland U.S., but they are a direct descendant from the Virginia whitetails. They made their way down here to Key West on a land bridge between 6,000 and 12,000 years ago during the last migration of a massive iceberg during the last ice age. But as it melted off, of course, they lost their ability to get back to the mainland. So that's where the Florida key deer came from, and they're a protected species down here. Suzanne hasn't seen any in years, where they used to be common. Ever since the spraying started, folks. She continues, also for your interest, 20 years ago when I was in Key West, there were free chickens and free cats roaming around town. Are they still there? We're seeing the chickens, and they were in a video we made yesterday of the sunset. There are not as many as I saw down here 19 years ago, the last time I was in Key West. And I haven't seen a single cat. The Hemingway cats, Ernest Hemingway lived down here. We've been by his house a couple of times. We'll go in there if I stay long enough to do it, because I'm a huge Ernest Hemingway fan. As a writer, I've studied his style, read a lot of his short stories, Old Man in the Sea. He was a very unique guy. I see a lot of myself in him. FYI, my middle name's Ernest. I don't think there was any connection to that, but haven't seen a single cat. He had these pet Maine Coons, the big six-toed cats, and they procreated, and the Key West is known for the cats, and they keep the wild chicken population in check. I haven't seen a single cat the whole time I've been here, and much less chickens. So I think what they're spraying's keeping these populations in check, if not eradicated. Suzanne continues, I never let my little dog out here. Small dogs can be trained to use pee pads, and the pads thrown away when soiled and used. They can be flushed, whatever, the doo-doo can go down the toilet. She says, I love your West Virginia accent and attitude and hope you start feeling better. Thank you for giving us accurate information on all these, and she puts in quotes, conspiracy theories. Also, in 2012, I was so sick from the bioweapon Lyme disease that I could barely get out of bed for 2 years, and when I tried to report it to the CDC, they told me over and over again that, quote, there is no Lyme disease in Florida, even though I had a positive, valid test. So the woman tested positive for Lyme disease, went to the government organization that's supposed to be in charge of monitoring all this stuff, gave them a copy of her positive test, and they said, oh no, you can't possibly have this because this isn't in Florida. And yet we're supposed to believe the folks that tell us to put our blind trust in them. Sickening. She continues, and we're wrapping it up here. And of course, chronic Lyme, which I probably have, is yet another conspiracy theory, she puts in quotes. And there was plenty of Lyme disease in Florida. Please take care of yourself and your beautiful family. God bless you and protect you, Suzanne. Suzanne, thank you for your email. So here we are. Suzanne, an unwilling boots on the ground. She's down here in South Florida, contracted Lyme disease, went through the proper protocol, being responsible, trying to get the word out. Because when you get something like that, what do? You report it to the agencies and officials that are supposed to get the word out so other people can watch out for those nasty tick bites, make sure they're using their bug spray. So she tells them, hey, I've got this. And they told her, oh, no, you don't. Why? Because when it comes to the government, the truth is what they say it is, right? All right, let's go on to another email. I have a lot to say about this one. All right, where did we put it? We put this one. I'm reading them out of order from where I put them, so please be patient with me. Here we go. It's from a nurse named Deborah. Again, front line, boots on the ground. Doesn't matter what the government's telling us through their bought and paid for media outlets. What matters is what the folks like you and me and Suzanne and Deborah, a nurse, are actually seeing out there in the real world. That's why I came to South Florida. I'm always saying, hey, don't just hide in your house and be scared to live. Go outside and play. And I found myself saying to myself, Kevin, that's what you're doing. How can you tell these folks what's going on, especially with everything you're hearing from Florida, if you don't go there yourself? So I came here. Okay, this is how you see the truth. And Deborah, a nurse, is telling us more truth here. Deborah writes, hi, Kevin. Good for you. Vacations are good for the soul. We saw your video about TB outbreaks. There's been a TB outbreak in Kansas City, okay? As an RN, I worked more than 40 years in big city hospitals in several states, as well as Saudi Arabia, and was never notified that I'd been exposed to TB until I worked at a hospital in Bradenton, Florida. Again, folks, this is ground zero. Listen to what this nurse of 40 years who's worked in different countries and never had to deal with TB, has to tell us. She continues, Bradenton is home to Tropicana. Probably the largest orange juice corporation in the world, among other things. They employ a large number of orchard field workers. We, nurses, knew when an undocumented patient was in the emergency department or the emergency room. They were usually brought to the hospital by a Tropicana employee, and the face sheet, which lists, of their charts, it lists their name, address, family, employer, and insurance, was always blank. Just the name. No employer or no address, contact info, employer, or insurance. After 40 years of zero TB exposure, at that hospital, I was exposed to tuberculosis 4 times in less than 2 years. When we were exposed to subjected or actual TB cases, we were required to get TB skin tests every 6 weeks for the next 3 months. I'm writing all of this to suggest that the increase in TB may be related to our open border policy of the last 4 years. During that time, I often told my husband, quote, just wait, we will soon start seeing TB outbreaks across the U.S. I hope you and your beautiful family have a wonderful time in Key West. Please use only my first name, Deborah. Well, Deborah, if you're like me, you get to enjoy going to your spouse now and saying, see, I told you I was right. You were right, Deborah. Now, here's what I've got to say about this. As you know, most of you, my wife's from the Philippines. She was 28 years old when she got here. She's been here almost 9 years now. She is a U.S. citizen now. She has her U.S. citizenship, her passport. We will have very soon, and we're going to start taking trips around Europe now that she can get in without question because she's a U.S. citizen. We love to travel. Actually got this shirt in Tokyo, Japan last winter. So here's my point. To get her and my son, who is a U.S. citizen by birthright, even though he was born in the Philippines, we had to get what's called a consulate record of birth abroad to verify that I was his father, DNA testing, all that. And it's good. It's to protect the child. Okay, it's to make sure he's not being human trafficked out of the country. It's to make sure that some father, some Filipino man isn't having his child stolen from him because his cheating wife hooks up with a rich American and decides to go to wherever. So I never had a problem doing these tests. But to get them prepared to come to the U.S., they also had to go through a litany of vaccines. But it was none of the new stuff. It was for stuff that we've eradicated here for the most part, like polio, like tuberculosis, that they still have in the Philippines and in pretty much every third world country. It's not been eradicated in those places. So a lot of people complain about immigration. Listen, my wife did it legally. We paid our fees. We waited in line. We went through. The process is not about trying to keep out poor people. It's not about, we don't like people who aren't from where we're from, which is what certain people of a political belief system, they try to make it sound like that. No, it's not. We're trying to protect ourselves. I believe most folks would welcome most people from anywhere in the world here in America with open arms, as long as they do it the right way. And it's not just about respecting us enough to respect our laws, but we don't want these terrible things, diseases that we have eradicated, coming back and flaring their ugly heads like TB. And here, Deborah the nurse is telling us that's one of the ways it's getting here. So we've got to go back and ask ourselves, if this guy right here in a motel room in Key West, with nothing but a bachelor's degree, that's my highest education level, and I've never been an expert in anything, but I've got enough common sense to see the dangers associated with just letting upwards of 30 million people a year come into the country unchecked without coming through improper means, the disaster that can lead to with simply disease alone, not to mention crime, drug lords, the gangs they're getting in Chicago and shipping back in mass, thank God. Why would anybody that we're supposed to trust, like these big government agencies, like the CDC, that, when Suzanne told them she had Lyme disease, they said, oh no, there's no possible way you can have Lyme disease. That's not in Florida. But, oh no, trust us, we're the government. Clearly, it's by design. It can only be by design that they would completely welcome potential TB carrying, polio carrying people into our country to spread that stuff. Why? Mass depopulation. They can get us from the sky with the aerial sprays and whatever in the heck is in that they seem to be able to activate. And right here, this guy who was dumb enough to come down here to ground zero in Florida to see it for himself somehow gets sprayed with this, the next contingency, the next iteration to activate this system again, to where for 3 days I'm like, oh my God, I'm ready to go home. I'm not going to be sick in Key West until March. Then on that 4th day, I'm out here running in the heat and the humidity and I feel like sprinting. And the only reason I didn't was because I didn't want to show off. Brah. And it's not just Florida. Let me wrap it up, guys. Since I'm feeling good today, I'm going to go out and do some stuff. We did go parasailing yesterday, even though I still felt a bit under the weather. That was great. Going to talk to you a little bit about that more. I do intend to make another video today. Maybe tomorrow, but there's some things I want to say about parasailing, but this isn't the time. But I want to end with just a short email from Patty in Oregon to show that this is not just the East Coast and it's not just Ground Zero, Florida. Patty writes, Kevin, you can use my name and share. I'm Patty in Eastern Oregon. This is an update to an email I sent regarding strange thick fog descending on us as I had my 3 dogs outside, in which I experienced sharp pain in my head. Because of the warnings from you and your viewers, I knew to get indoors and keep my family inside. Within 4 days, my 3 dogs came down with cold symptoms, one after the other for a few days each. 3 other dogs that were not outside never got ill. Proof in the pudding, right there. Fortunately, the dogs got well and I suffered no further effects. If it weren't for your channel and viewers, I would not have known to get inside immediately and believe things would have been worse. Keep sharing, Kevin, as it could save our lives. Enjoy that Florida sunshine. Patty, thank you for your email. So listen, in that email, Patty probably gives us the best advice we can take, any of us. And she wasn't dumb enough to prove it the way I did by coming down. And when I saw those chemtrails north of Jacksonville, just as soon as I crossed into Florida from Georgia, I should have turned that truck around and gone back to Virginia and hunkered in there beside that wood stove until the flowers started blooming in March and April. But no, I kept coming. I kept getting sprayed. Patty went out in the fog and her dogs that went with her got sick. The dogs that stayed inside didn't. Folks, I'm the last guy who will ever tell you to cower in fear behind your couch down in your basement at home. Don't go outside. I refuse to live that way. That's not living. That's merely existing. We've got to live, but we've gotten to the point to where we need to get a little smarter about how we're doing it. Okay, when we go outside and we see those chemtrails and we see that heavy, thick, dense fog, and when we smell what smells like burning wires, burning chemicals, we need to go back inside until it all passes. I mentioned I'm going to go out and have fun here today since I'm feeling better. Let me tell you, the minute I see or smell any of that stuff, I'm coming back in my room. And I do believe I'm going to be planning an end to this trip much sooner than later. So folks, send us your stories. Again, the email is crazylake@mail.com. Appreciate your support. Thanks for all these emails that have come in already, and be safe out there.